In the future, we will all have a few things. Flying cars, maybe, maybe not. Robots, who knows? But self-driving cars, yes, those we shall have, unless, of course, the troglodytes get in the way, and they are the reason, in many cases, we can't have nice things. Let's discuss that. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Joining me as he does from time to time is Randy Kirk, because he knows a thing or two about a thing or three. In this case, we're talking about just the news. The news, Randy, have you heard?
I have.
So we talked
I,
about this before we got started, but apparently there are folks in who are of the belief that we shouldn't have nice things. And they will have these protests to show what kind of monsters they are, generally. It's nice and loud. And they're vandalizing Waymo's driverless cars. Why? Why would they do this, Randy? Do you have any guesses?
well, the first thing that came to my mind was this is San Francisco. And that I think that was the end of the question. I mean, we have some weird characters in San Francisco. It's kind of like an entirely different culture.
It feels
And
that way.
it feels that way. And we've had a lot of people talk about this, not the least of which was our buddy Elon Musk has been talking about what a horrible environment there is in San Francisco. So that was my first thought was there's weirdos there. And some one person or two people thought this would be a good idea. And of course, then you get the mob involved.
Mob rule, not a good thing.
Not a good.
It is crazy to see the absolute chaos. What do you think makes people? I mean, there are people who just love chaos. There are people who just love to, um, you know, when I was a kid, there was a day on the playground where it snowed. And I was on first recess, and me and some other kids went out and started building a fort, a cool little wall. And we were going to have a snowball fight. But of course, recess was much too short for that.
Right.
And then the kids came out for second recess. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to finish the fort. We're going to play on it at middle recess. And when I came out for middle recess, it had been destroyed. Because it's so much easier to knock things down than to build them up. And there are people who love knocking things down. Whenever I see one of those shows where there's only a handful of survivors left, all I can think is some firebug would burn down the entire world. There'd be nothing left. Because who's going to stop them? It only takes one firebug to burn down all the cities. They'd blow up bridges. They'd do all kinds of terrible things because isn't it cool to watch stuff get broke?
Yeah.
I would argue it is not cool. So what's going on? What's wrong with driverless cars? Why would they be mad at driverless cars at all?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question. In this particular case, it's hard to imagine why these young people that are, nothing better to do or something have decided to attack a driverless car. But it has been happening, and it was actually predicted that this would happen. There's the potential, I guess, for some job loss from Uber drivers, from taxi drivers, from delivery people, et cetera. So there's a possible social justice angle here where somebody can say, oh, if these things, if they become there's a word there, ubiquitous. If they become ubiquitous, then it could put some people out of work. We need to destroy these before that happens. I suppose that could be one possibility, Brian.
It is a possibility. I would argue that none of the people in this crowd is what I'm going to argue. None of these are Uber drivers. None of these are taxi drivers. None of these people have been displaced by the chaos that they're trying to stop. It's the wrong people and the wrong target. And it just makes no sense. It's mind-boggling. It defies understanding to me.
So there's another possibility, of course, and that is that they're worried that these self-driving cars will harm people. And the press really, really wants to make sure that we understand that that's a possibility. So every time a self-driving vehicle, whether it be a Tesla or even with regard to the Cruise, of course, has been put out of business basically because it harmed a person. Now, if we'd had that rule in place over the last 150 years, we would not have industry today, because every single new change that we had, whether it's Hoover Dam or whether it was looms. If we want to go back a few hundred years to looms and the factory, the famous factory fire that destroyed all these, I guess, hundreds of people. So many different things. People lose their lives. People get hurt as a result of change, as a result of things moving forward. And in this particular case, yeah, there's going to be people that are going to be hurt and or killed by driverless cars. But is the benefit worth it? And of course, we can make the argument, but these guys are not interested in hearing logic. They're just interested in either social justice or mayhem, one of the two, or both.
Or both. I don't see this having a social justice angle. There are already more job openings than there are jobs. You could argue, well, I want a better job. Driver is not a better job. This is a low job that there are some people I have met who are drivers who enjoy it. They like the ability to not sit in an office or not stand at a machine and just be able to be out all day. But the people I've met who enjoy it are people who work for companies and get an hourly check, and those days are gone. You're right. Cruise was effectively put out of business by one death.
Right.
Did that person die? I don't recall, but it was a very,
They
very
were dragged
grievous injury for
quite a
sure.
long way. Yes, yes.
Uber's program was shut down when a person was struck and killed by a
Right.
vehicle running autonomously, even though there was a safety driver who was not paying attention. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than humans.
Right.
And this is Waymo is not perfect, but it doesn't have any deaths yet that I'm aware of. Do you know of any?
Yeah, I don't say that I've been following all of these competitive companies that are doing the other autonomous driving, like I follow Tesla. But I'm sure there's been accidents, and it doesn't really matter. These people are not looking at Waymo. They're looking again. I don't know what's going on with these people. It could definitely just be somebody who had too many things, too many drinks. His buddy had had too many drinks. One of them says, "Hey, why don't we go out and stop on one of those Waymo cars that don't have I mean, first of all, there's nobody to stop you because there's nobody in the car to even get in your face if you decide to stop it. So it's kind of like the internet where you can say nasty things to people if you have an anonymous profile. So there's that. There's the anonymity they think about what they're doing. Obviously, in this world, is there any anonymity left anymore with video cameras everywhere? And they're obviously all being captured on video cameras. I think they also think that there's no consequence. We've got a world right now where you can steal stuff out of stores. It just happened to our governor the other day down in California. He's sitting there going, "How come those people just stole all that stuff and ran out of the store?" And people around him go, "Because there's no consequences." So I think with the riots and the stealing, there's right now, people haven't thought there's any consequences. And so, sounds like fun. Let's go do it.
Do you think this kind of behavior is the sort of thing we will see in medium-sized cities? Because all cities have pockets of despair, pockets of lower income, pockets of drug problems and other situations that create dire and hopeless circumstances. Is this going to result in neighborhoods being restricted from service? Because what I see happening is, we've already seen stores that have closed and the communities get very upset. Well, now there's no, convenience store in my neighborhood. Well, right, but a convenience store is not a social service. It's a business, and businesses have to make business decisions. And I see some of these neighborhoods in documentaries that I'll watch, and I think, that it takes a lot of courage for those business owners to remain open
Yes.
in the face of a lot of these adversities. Um, I think what's going to happen is it's going to widen the divide between the people who feel despair and the people who don't.
Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is you could have in your programming, these neighborhoods do not drive through these neighborhoods.
Yeah,
And therefore that neighborhood now no longer has that service available. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a possibility. Of course, I happen to be old school. I'm so old, Brian.
I
But
know.
I remember a time when people actually got what was it called? Executed if they murdered someone or raped somebody. That, in my lifetime, they would actually execute people for murder or for rape. And of course, we don't do that anymore. We give them a 7-year sentence or something. Then you get to come out and do it again. So maybe we have to actually create a situation. Do you know that not in my lifetime, but close, you would hang them for stealing your horse because the horse was so critical. It was so
Mhm,
important to your life that if
mhm.
they stole the horse, the whole town would come out. They'd hang the guy for stealing a horse if they could catch him. So we have a much gentler, kinder world today. But the gentler, kinder world means that people create this mayhem without consequence. Maybe we just need to get more consequences.
Boy, it's a societal issue, and I certainly can't pretend to know any of the answers. I, I'm not gonna try and be the genius on that one. There are other people smarter than me, and especially people who think they're smarter than me.
Oh,
Yeah, walked into that one. So I think, yeah, I don't really have a conclusion on this. My point is, guys, let's not be just terrible. Let's not burn things to the ground. Let's not destroy other people's property. If you have a moral objection to things like autonomous cars, voice it. Voice it. There are people who require the ability to get around who cannot afford a driver or a taxi. And the message that videos like this send is you're just going to be homebound. That's your fate, because we can't have nice things.
and just to make sure that we do have a conclusion, I think what they should have done instead is they should have thrown paint on the Mona Lisa. That obviously is a better solution.
Soup. It was soup,
Oh,
and
soup.
the Mona Lisa has a barrier already. They put soup on the plastic that covers it. I don't think those guys should have gotten any headlines. I think it should have been swept under the rug, because attention is what they're after, and attention is what they got.
Yes.
What a terrible, terrible idea to vandalize someone else's things. It's not even the right target, guys. Oh, climate change. To heck with the Mona Lisa. I
Yeah.
don't see the connect.
Yeah.
So what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it in the comments, but please be civil. Please don't call for extrajudicial assassinations or really any kind of vigilantism. This is, after all, just property. There is something going on that makes people terrible, and it is not. I don't believe it is the car that is the problem. I think the car is an easy target because it is clearly insured, owned by a vastly wealthy company, and there is no one aboard. So leave it in the comments, like, subscribe, do the usual things. Head over to the old Randy Kirkaroo channel there, see what he's got going on. He might even have some amazing guests this week, specifically me. So stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots behind the wheel of your own car that has no wheel.